Welcome to the Steady On podcast, where God's hard truth meets your hard story. I don't need to tell you that life gets hard. Life gets hard, really hard. But God's faithfulness is still active and alive in our hard. And these episodes are dedicated to remembering and claiming the promises of a faithful God. I'm your host, Angie Bauman. I'm a pastor and Bible teacher, founder of Steady On Ministries, and creator of the Step-by-Step Bible Study Method. But more than that, I'm a trauma and abuse survivor who carried a heavy weight of shame and worthlessness for many years. And I still struggle, but I live in much more freedom now because I know God through His Word and speak truth to the lies of the enemy with His Word. And that's what we do here. On Mondays, we take it in by studying the promises of God. And on Wednesdays, we live it out with teaching and testimony on the promises of God. So thank you for tuning in, my friend. You are the reason for this show. And I'm so very, very glad you are here. Let's get started. Hello, friend, and welcome in. Thank you for spending some time with me today. I'm joined by podcaster and writer Tosha Johnson for a conversation on working hard, living with intentionality, and keeping God at the center of it all. Tosha and I figured out right away we had a lot in common, though it may not look like it on the outside. She's a single Black woman with a demanding corporate job and no children, and that's not like me at all, really. But we went deep fast before we even pressed record. And I admitted at times I felt like I had missed it because even though I went to business school, I chose ministry and mothering over corporate. And I've regretted that sometimes when those paths that I chose proved to be long and unsatisfying. And Tosha laughed lovingly at me and said she knew exactly what I was saying. She chose a corporate career and felt at times as though she had missed it because she didn't have marriage and family like so many women do. Why do we do that? Why do we look at other people and want what they have or think it's better than what we have? Why do we question God's protection and provision? Why do we romanticize the other path? Why do we forget to praise Him for what we have and instead focus on what we do not have? I don't know why we do it, but I know that God calls us to recognize when we're doing it and stop it. Our verse this week is from Isaiah 54:2, and it talks about preparing for your life to be more. But not more of someone else's more of what God has for me, more of what God has for you. Isaiah 54:2 in the Voice says, "Enlarge your house. You are going to need a bigger place. Don't underestimate the amount of room that you'll need. So build, build, build." Tosha talks about building, about God's work not being in vain. And friend, if you're looking at your life and wondering if you've missed it, I encourage you to ask yourself if maybe, just maybe, you're not building in the right place yet. Let's listen in. Tosha, welcome to the Steady On community.
Thank you. Thank you. I am thrilled to be here.
I'm so excited, friend. We've been chatting for a little while before we pressed record, and yes. I cannot wait to just share Tosha with you and her heart and her energy. I want to talk to you first about the word hustle, because your podcast is Hustle in Faith. And I think a lot of times I hear hustle like as a negative word, like don't hustle or cease striving, be still and know that I am God, right? And so how are you using it? Define it for us. Why the word hustle?
You know, it's so funny that you think of the word as hustle as a negative connotation, because I've never looked at it that way. Mainly because throughout my entire life, I've always had a side hustle. So the word hustle for me has a different meaning. I've always had something extra on the side. So I have a 9-to-5. But even as a teenager, I always had like something extra. I was always, working towards trying to better myself, bringing in additional income. Wasn't rich, so that was another thing too. So hustle to me is always like, okay, what else can I do to bring in additional income and do something that I love at the same time? So hustle to me was always trying to better myself. So even now, I have a 9-to-5, but I have my own mini consulting firm on the side. I do voiceover work. I have a podcast. So hustle to me was always bettering myself and making sure that I didn't just rely on my 9-to-5, but I put the in faith. So hustle in faith. All of my efforts are in vain if I don't put God first.
Yes.
So a lot of us, and I know there's quite a few of us that have side hustles as well, and work outside the home or whatnot, and even if you don't work outside the home, a lot of us are so busy trying to better ourselves that sometimes we lose focus of what we're doing it for. And so everything that I do, I want to make sure that I put God first and that it is not in vain, right? And I want to make sure that what I'm doing is advancing the kingdom. So that's why I came up with the word hustle and faith.
I knew you were going to reframe that beautifully for me. And you have. Like, I love that so much because I think it depends on what we're hustling for, right? Like, because if we're hustling to try to achieve, assemble, if we're trying to get affirmation from the world, we got to get something out there, then that can just be, I think, hamster on a wheel hustle, right? Like we're going nowhere. Exactly what you said. But I hear you saying, but you can live intentionally and be linking arms with Jesus Christ for kingdom work, right? In a way that then, like, it doesn't feel draining. It doesn't feel too much. It feels inspiring or infusing with the energy and the hope that comes from the Lord. So I love that so much. Yeah. Yeah. Well, talk to me about your 9 to 5. What is it that you do, and what are some of the obstacles you've faced in the corporate world?
Sure. So my 9 to 5, I've primarily worked in the market research industry for, good grief, like 20 years. It feels so weird saying that, but for major global firms. So I know a lot of folks would know these firms, but I don't want to name drop that. But that's pretty much my 9 to 5. So I've worked in that arena for that long. But the corporate world has a lot of obstacles I faced in the corporate world, meaning, and it varies. One is oftentimes I'm the only person that looks like me in the room, which is a lot of pressure. You know, there have been plenty of times I'm the only Black woman in the room. And I used to feel very insecure about that, mainly because it puts a lot of pressure on me because I hate to say this, but oftentimes I may be the only Black woman that person has, that the majority of the folks in the room have interacted with. And I'm supposed to be speaking for the entire race. And it's like, we're not a monolith. Yeah. And, we're all different. Yeah. I'm a human being. I bleed red just like everybody else does. So from that standpoint, it's been difficult, but then also trying to get ahead on the corporate ladder has been difficult because I hate to say this, it's who you know, not what you know. That has been my experience throughout my time in the corporate world. And I still work in the corporate world, but my mindset is outside of the corporate world. Meaning I was very blessed with the opportunity to kind of see that that's what it was going to be like early on. So now I view it from the standpoint of that it funds my life. It's not my life. So I have a completely different mindset in how I view that. And so sometimes it can still be draining to be in the corporate world because I just know, there are times you see folks getting promoted and you're kind of like, really? Is the bar that low at this point? But then, you see these things happening and I'm like, God, this isn't fair. You know how hard I work. And that's the other thing I've oftentimes felt, because I am oftentimes the only woman of color in the room, I have to work 2 or 3 times harder to prove, listen, I know what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just frustrating. And especially, as women, we have to deal with that. But then you add color on top of that. That's like another thing, right? So that's a lot of the obstacles that I have encountered. But again, I'm at that point where I have already decided it funds my life. It's not my life. I use my demeanor to help as many people as I can. I'm always pleasant. I know what I'm doing. And I'm all about business. I have boundaries and I know where God is leading me. So I have the ability to be creative. I don't always get that opportunity in my 9 to 5. Hence why I started my Starring You, my consulting firm, the voiceover work, the podcast. This is me. So I get to use my creativity after work. And then my 9 to 5 was more analytical. Yes, I'm that nerd that's analyzing data. So that's me. So yeah, that would probably be the obstacles I've encountered.
Thank you for sharing those. I hear you talking about identity. I think that's what that means when it funds my life. It's not my life, right? Because
Yes.
sometimes we can get so wrapped up in our work that this has happened to me several different times in my life where I lost some kind of work or project or something and I didn't realize until it was gone how much I was finding my identity in that work, which is one of the reasons I think sometimes the Lord releases us from things, because he's like, hey, we need to come back to center here,
I
right? Like,
agree on that.
yeah, I just get so
Yes.
wrapped up in things sometimes. And I love your challenge there where it's like, I invest in this, I work hard at it, I contribute all that I can, and I understand that this is not who I am, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So I
exactly.
like that. On top of being a Black woman, you're also a Christian. And I would think sometimes, whether you know it or not, maybe you might be the only one of those that people have interacted with very
Yes.
much or something. Does that add another layer of differentness or separateness in your experience?
You know what? It kind of, I like to say that people automatically know that I'm different, not
Mm-hmm.
just because of my race, but because of my positivity.
Yeah.
Um, I don't drink. I don't go to a lot of the places where, after work, a happy hour, people want to go to the bar. That is not my jam. It's not.
Yeah.
And I'm very steadfast on the values that I believe. And so to each its own. If you don't want to be friends with me because I'm not going to get drunk with you, or go to places that I don't that do not align with my values, so be it. And yes, I have lost I know I've lost probably a promotion or two because of that, and that's fine because I have been blessed with the opportunities to meet other people outside of my job. That's why I said I have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to work, and if you want me to do stuff that encroaches on my values and my time outside of work, that's going to enable me to work on projects that are fulfilling, that have placed me in a position to do the things that I know God wants me to do, then hey, that's it. We're done. And I know God has oftentimes moved me to even higher positions at a different company, or you know what I'm saying? Like he moves you on when that adventure, I like to refer to them as adventures. When that adventure is
Yeah.
done, I move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that probably what you said earlier, so much it's about who you know. And when you decide not to socialize in certain ways, sometimes within your company, sometimes some of those things happen too, don't they? That the connections, yeah, they stay professional, and that's not bad or wrong, but there's some things that happen in places that because of your values, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that after hours. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, and it's very
Exactly.
brave. It's very brave to be that different. And so I just want to say that out loud, because I think I think it makes statements that we don't even know that we're making that are positive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I have had some people on the side. It's so funny. Like, I left early. I didn't want to go anyway. And it's like, and then, they'll whisper and it's just us. And I'm like, why are you whispering? We're here by ourselves. I didn't want to go. And I know you didn't go. So the next time they ask, I'm not going to go. And I'm like, okay, all
Okay.
right. So it's good, but it's just funny because
Yeah.
they'll like come up to me afterwards. Every now and then I've had that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't realize that sometimes you're the only book that people are going to read. And so I really do try to make mine a good one.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
you're right on that. I just never really took the time to think about that, but you're
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I know that there was some defining moment that really prompted you to do what you call build your own table with God's guidance. Will you talk to us about what happened?
Yeah, I'll never forget this. So this was back in college. Honestly, I graduated college, and I'll never forget this. Again, I don't come from a very wealthy family, so I worked full time. This was my college experience. I worked full time and I went to school full time. So I literally worked from 8 to 4:30. Okay. I was working various temp jobs within my field. So that was a blessing. I was working in the marketing field. I was always the youngest person in the office. 8 to 4:30, I would work. And then I'd go to class from 5:45 to 9 p.m. I did that 4 days a week for 4 years. In my last semester of college, all the classes that I couldn't take at night, I had to take that during the day. So my Saturday was 9 to 5. I did this all 4 years until I graduated. I will never forget. I walked across that stage, had my little, the piece of paper in my hand. And I'm like, the world is my oyster now. I have arrived, people. And I'll never forget, I couldn't find a job. I could not get hired. I spent almost a year.
No.
Rejection after rejection after rejection. And I was like, I remember having the biggest pity parties to my mom, crying like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand what is going on. And my mom, like anyone who knows her, she's very no nonsense. And she's like, get it together. If you can't go through the front door, create your own opportunity. And so, I don't know, something in me snapped. And that's when I started, okay, you know what? Let me figure out how to create a website. Taught myself how to create websites, taught myself how to do a lot of kind of techie things. I've always had like that techie side of me. I've never pursued that, but from a formal standpoint, created a website. I started going to business networking events. Again, little old me, 21, going to all these different events and much people that were older than me. And this is just when the internet was starting to explode with all the brand ambassador stuff. So I was teaching people how to do these things. And she was absolutely right. My side hustle that I was focused on as a main job at that point opened the door for me to finally get into my field. So it wasn't me marching in there like new college grad with no experience. It was me marching in there, finally putting God first, because that was the other thing. I had gotten so big-headed thinking this little piece of paper was magical. And I kind of was like, well, God will just bless whatever endeavor, he sees that I'm doing the thing, he's just going to bless it. And I did not put him first the way I should have. When I was looking for all these jobs. I was praying, but it was more like an angry prayer, like, God, don't you see what's going on here? Let's get it together.
You're not holding up. I did this. I worked. Yeah. I went to school. I did that. You're not holding up your end of the bargain. Yeah. I mean, I just kind of know. Yeah, I know what you're talking about by being there. Yes.
I was looking at it like a business deal. Like, I did my part. Where are you in? It's like, oh no, you own the whole thing. You are in charge of this deal, not me. So things started to change for me once I realized, first of all, who was really in charge. And then second, stop having a pity party, because, there's more than one avenue to get to success. And that's the part that I was trying to go the traditional route that everyone else had went, which was, expecting to, apply for a job and just getting it. No, that was not the case for me. I literally had to create this company. And that is what got me the foot in the door.
And there's a dependence, I think sometimes, right? Like the things that we want to open up for us don't open up for us as Christians who take our faith walk seriously. God blesses us by helping us see how dependent we are on him, because that's the place where, right? Like, and so I think about your situation. I can think about some things in my own life where I'm like, oh, what I really learned during that season of no, or whatever that looked like, was, oh, I don't need to make this happen. I need to trust you to make this, whatever this is, happen. And when I do that, then you can allow something new to come into my life. But right now, I think you said big head or whatever. You're just like, you're trusting in yourself, right? I'm trusting in myself, and you want better for me than that, because trusting in myself can only take me so far. Right. And so now you really talk to women about like having this hustle and faith attitude. Will you talk to me a little bit about what that means for you? How do you help other people say maybe there's more to life than your 9-to-5 job?
I do that by always encouraging folks to invest in themselves. And one of the ways I do that is via my podcast, Hustle and Faith, which has been such a humbling experience, because I'm going to give you a little background why I even started this podcast. It was about 6 years ago. I was at the lowest point in my life. I had literally lost my job, lost my savings, unemployment ran out, lost my apartment. I had to go live with another family member for about a month and a half, about 2 months. Again, I didn't know it was only going to be like 2 months, right? But I lost all of these things at one time. And it felt like Job. And I couldn't figure out, God, I'm a good person. What is going on here? But I had lost my way. Again, I was a little slow. Because I really was doing all of this investing in myself. And again, I wasn't remembering what the hustle was for at that point. I lost my way. And so God was humbling me to show me I'm the source.
Yeah.
All of those other things are resources. I'm the source. And I didn't realize that. Angie, it took me a while to realize that. It took me a minute. Losing all those things at one time is what placed me in a position to start this podcast, because I didn't want my suffering to be in vain. And I wanted to see how far I'd come. And so that is one of the ways that I try to help other women, is through the podcast, giving them inspiration, making sure that they continue to put God first. And you can put God first and still be successful in business. A lot of people have a tendency to separate the two. Now, your 9 to 5 may not necessarily be something that you're passionate about. Trust me, been there. But that is why I also don't put my identity in my 9 to 5. It funds my life. It's not my life. I have barriers and boundaries for a reason, because I know I don't ever want to go back to that point in my life again. So I am cognizant of the fact that I have to have a cutoff from my 9 to 5 so I can focus on those things that ground me. I start my day off with Bible study and exercise. That's it. And some people kind of make fun of me because I wake up around 5, between 5 and 6. But that is my quiet time. I ease into my day, and I'm blessed to work from home. So I start work around 7:30, 8 o'clock, somewhere in there. Do my work, do my job, finish. I'm starting to do a little bit more Bible study again, and working on the podcast, because I can do both. It's synonymous to me. And exercise in with my day with an evening walk or something like that. So that is how I want to go about helping women, is through the podcast. I also help them through my consulting firm in the event that they are maybe working within the home or outside the home and they don't have the techie skills. Like if they want to start a podcast or something, please don't let technology stop you. That is not that. You got to get your voice out there. There's more than one way to do it. And there are folks that can help you with the technology side and the marketing side. I got that covered. And then the other thing that I'm most excited about is my upcoming book, which is How to Live an Extraordinary Life with or Without Mr. Right, a Christian woman's guide on how to survive and thrive on Single Avenue. There are so many Christian women in my position that are single, work outside the home, and this idea of what a Christian woman looks like, what defines success, to me has always steered towards folks that, one, don't look like me, two, don't also have my similar background. I'm 41, single, not married, no kids. According to the church, I missed the boat. And that is so dead wrong. And that is according to whose church? Because as I bring out what I'm going to be bringing out in my book, there's a lot of examples of folks that were single and very successful. So these are some of the ways, very long-winded answer, in how I am trying to motivate and encourage a lot of other women that, yes, primarily women, a lot of women that are in my position.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. And for those resources. And I love what you said at the beginning. I don't love it, but I love it because you said a couple of different times, I lost my way. I lost my way. And I think that really points to, it in your life, what I see is it's not just been this like up trajectory all the time. Like sometimes we focus on God for a while I mean, hopefully we do forever, but let's just be honest. Like we're like all in and we're dependent and all that. And then it starts getting to where we're like, oh, I'm doing this. And I don't even think we do this on purpose. I really don't. But
No.
like, I'm doing this, I've got this. And then something happens and we realize, oh, I was counting on myself more than I was counting on God. And I think that's the ultimate of how we lose our way, right? When we're pulling it back, we think we have control. And again, I think a lot, distractions, and a lot of it just seeps in. And so I really appreciate what you're saying there, because I think some of the things that you're offering are helping other people either when they realize they've lost their way, or help us not lose our way. Yeah. As we're doing this, because no matter what, I always want my life to be just a little bit more like, perfect than it is. I mean, that's just my personality. Like how do I get rid of the distractions? How do I get rid of the unexpected things or whatever? And I'm like, there's so many gifts in those unexpected things. Stop pushing them away. But I think that sometimes I can lose my way because I get frustrated about the things that actually are his gifts and interruptions to me, so that I don't so I keep looking to him instead of just looking into myself.
Yes, you and I are definitely kindred spirits.
Yeah.
That's definitely how I feel. I'm just like, God, I don't need all the surprises.
Yeah, right. I just want
all surprised out.
I just want you to I want to show you my list for today, and you just orchestrate things so all this stuff gets done, Lord, please.
Exactly.
He never does that for me.
Me either. Definitely. My life is not worth that
so
way.
funny.
So yes, you're absolutely right.
Well, one more question before we have to close. How do you help us, or how do you encourage us? Let me say it that way, to carve out time for ourselves. I know that's something that you mentioned briefly earlier, that it's important to carve out time for ourselves, and especially in a world where, for us women, when we carve out time for ourselves, we can hear words like selfish, or not doing the things we're supposed to do for other people, those kind of things. So I know that's not how you feel about it. So talk to us just a little bit about the importance of taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, whenever I hear that taking care of yourself is selfish, I just kind of roll my eyes, because you cannot pour from an empty cup.
Amen.
You can't pour from an empty cup. So for me, I am very, very protective of my time. I kid you not. Like I've had people kind of tease me on my jobs, like, I know what time Tasha's leaving. Yes, you better believe it, because you get a full day's work, full day's pay. You don't own my entire life. So what I do in order to make sure that I have time for myself, I'm like a tiny little old person. I will go to bed early, okay? Because in order for me to wake up between 5 and 6 a.m., I got to go to bed around 9. And here's the thing. So many people say, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. And it's like, we all have the same 24 hours. It's, how are you using those 24 hours? Did you really need to sit back and binge the entire 8 hours on Netflix of your favorite series? Or could you have just maybe possibly have watched 1 hour and then taken another hour to devote to continuing your education? And that's what I think, that's why a lot of people are like, oh, you're so energetic and whatnot. It's because I structure my time so I can have time to do things that are going to place me in a better position in the future. That's what it is. So I make sure, go to bed early. And again, I'm a morning person, so I know some people are not, and that's fine. But I know that I am more productive in the morning. So between 5 and 6 a.m., that is my time when I wake up, pray, Bible study, exercise, go to work. I make sure I take breaks throughout the day. And sometimes, listen, analyzing data, not the sexiest thing in the world. So I make sure that I also schedule in mini breaks. So there's something called the Pomodoro technique. Not sure if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
I love this. So, and they actually have apps on your phone that you can do, or your computer. So it is literally, if you're working on something that is very tedious, you don't want to do it, those are the things I like to knock out first. And I use the Pomodoro technique to do this. So literally it is like working straight for 45 minutes to an hour. Everything is turned off. No email, nothing, no dinging.
No dinging. Whatsoever. I know. Yeah. I call that no dinging.
Yes. Nothing is going on. It's just you focused on that project. And then all of a sudden, once the 45 minutes or the hour is up, the alarm goes off of the phone. I give myself 10 or 15-minute break. And if I'm still not done, I go back at it again.
Yeah.
I know that sounds so like trivial, or maybe it might be hard for some folks, but that works for me. And I have my day also phased out. The stuff that requires brain power is done in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm like the Energizer Bunny. Like towards the end of the day, I'm starting to wane.
Yes.
Like, and then I do take like a little break after work and I get energized again, because that's when I'll go exercise again, go for a walk, bike ride. Those are my things. That is how I
My husband and I call that eat the live frog first thing in the day. It's not called something fancy like that, but he's like,
I've heard that
I'm gonna eat the live frog first thing in the day. Because a lot of times I do, and I block my schedule, Tosha, which it sounds like similar. I think we have very similar patterns of that. I block my schedule, I block my time. I know what I'm gonna accomplish when.
Yep.
I have some flexibility in it, but largely I'm like, no, this is how I get the stuff done in the week. And I plan, this week I'll plan for next week and I'll block those things out and say, this is how I'm going to get the things done. And if everything doesn't have a home on there, I got to decide what I'm going to let go or what I'm going to, I got to figure that out. It keeps me accountable. I think it's one of the ways too that we prevent burnout and overwhelm, because to me, it's logical. And so then I'm like, okay, I know how I'm going to attack these things. And I also, I try not to like fool myself into thinking I can get more done than I really can, because we only do have so many hours. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate thanks for letting us in, like specifically on some of the ways that you do it, because I think I'm all about practical things. And sometimes those feelings of burnout and overwhelm, with a few adjustments, we can like take charge of our own schedule, right? I mean, we always submit it to the Lord. I know, but still, we have these hours, and how are we living them in a way that, honors him? So, I love that. I could talk to you all day. I love this. Yeah. I love how you're encouraging us to work hard and do it for the glory of God. Hustle in faith. I think that's my rewrite of hustle in faith. Like work hard for Jesus. I think because when we are working for him, then he does help keep us energized and not overwhelmed. So
agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, such a good conversation, Tosha. Thank you so much. So Tosha can be found at hustleinfaith.com, and her podcast is also Hustle in Faith. Any other call to action or a place you'd like to send the listener?
Actually, those are the major spots.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. So I encourage you, friend, to check her out. And Tosha, again, one more time, thank you so much for serving us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy.
It has been a joy. Same. Appreciate it. And thank you, friend, for listening. Until next time, peace. Thank you so much, Tosha. Thank you for sharing your confidence and trust in God that it is good and right to work hard and build something with our life, as long as we recognize it is for God's glory. Thank you for sharing your setbacks even, so we feel less alone in ours. Our verse again this week is about believing and building. It's Isaiah 54:2. In the NIV, it says, "Enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch your tent curtains wide. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords. Strengthen your stakes." And if you haven't yet, I encourage you to listen to Monday's Take It In episode, where I invited Steady On team member Joy Moore to help me unpack this verse. That's a special one between the two of us. Next week, you'll feel a shift in the podcast episodes as we begin to count down to Christmas. I'll be offering a special Advent series, and our guest interviews for December will all focus on sharing how studying the Bible has transformed the life of our guest. The first week of Advent focuses on hope, and our verse will be Romans 5:5, which reminds us that hope will not lead to disappointment. And my guest will be Mary Kay Tiller. Mary Kay is a dear ministry friend of mine who sat with me to share how knowing God's Word has shaped and transformed her life. If you haven't yet, I'd be so grateful if you would subscribe or follow the podcast on whatever directory you're using to listen. It only takes a second, and it guarantees you'll see new episodes as soon as they drop. And if someone came to mind as you were listening today, I'd love it if you would share the episode with them. Inviting them into what we're doing here is another great way to support the show. Thank you so much for listening. I pray wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.